whether it's actually happening, but you've got the principles are all here. Two looking from one window and two from another. Remember the mission itself. The Echod Masra Bobe'em, so there's someone in between who's warning them. Okay? So whatever's going, let's take a capital offense. Let's say there's somebody there with a revolver. And that's the main point. Now, this is how do you join? Remember, we learned this last time. Maybe easier, Peter, if we put people on mute. I'm getting some feedback. Sound, that's the word. Very good. Bisman, and then people can also come off mute. Bisman she miksoson royin elu es elu. If some people can see, so the group here, we've got two. One sees the other group on the other side. Hari elu edus achas. That's considered one group. So one group is because somebody in one of the groups sees someone else in the other group, then that is sufficient to be considered one group. V'im lav, if not, hari elu shtei edus. There are two separate groups. That's what we saw last time. Two separate groups. How can you join up two groups? You can join up if somebody can see someone else in the other group. They are then considered to be one group. And then the Mishnah says, therefore, remember, if they are two separate groups, if one group are Eidim Zomimim, the other group can still continue. That was the principle we had. In Ninsis, if one of the groups is Eidim Zomimim, right, the other group will continue. And therefore, what would happen? Let's just think this through. Therefore, the offender, well, he will be chayav because you've got this other pair who are saying he actually pulled the trigger. The other group, which are Eidim Zomimim, and wanted him to be killed. Now, that's very interesting. Although finally, in the final look at the whole picture here, you've got another pair of Eidim who are saying he actually is a killer, a murderer. But that doesn't matter. It's that group wanted him to be considered a murderer based on their testimony and their evidence. They're Eidim Zomimim, and therefore they actually will receive what they planned to happen to the accused. You with her? Albeit that there's another group who are going to tell us that this individual actually is a murderer. It doesn't matter. They are two separate groups. Had they been one group, then what would have happened? Had there been one group, then that group would have fallen away. They wouldn't be Eidim Zomimim. The whole group would collapse because they are one group. Yeah, but you would not carry out the Eidim Zomimim principle because you need a whole group. So what would happen? Everything collapses. The murderer, whether he's a murderer or not, doesn't matter. Nothing will happen to him because there is not a separate group who are saying that he is as a murderer. You with me? Now let's look at the Gemara. That's where we look at, if you like, a summary of where we're up to. Omar Mazur. Now there is something more in the Mishnah. We don't need that now, so we won't look at it at the moment. Omar Rav Zutra Batuvia. Omar Rav. In the name of Rav. Minayin La'edus. Now this is something different. Connected, but different. We are not looking at the Mishnah. There's a different case which is connected and similar, which is what? Minayin la'edus miyuchedes shehi pasula. How do you know that edus miyuchedes is not categorized as a group of Eidim. Now, what is an Eidus Miuchedes? Please look at Rashi. Eidus Miuchedes. Echod, not like two in the Mishnah. You've just got one observing what's taking place from one window, let's say, one observing from another window. Va'enon royin ze ese. This is one, not the same as two. This is one. Where do we know that if you've got two people who are giving testimony about an event, who says they have to see each other? Good question. We've got the principle of two witnesses where there are two witnesses. Who says they have to be capable of seeing each other, or in fact do see each other? That's what it means, Eidus Miuchedes. Eidus, which is a singular type of testimony, albeit two people seeing something, but they are considered an Eidus testimony, which is singular, Miuchedes. Have a look at the Gemara, please. How do we know that that is not considered testimony that will stand up? Shenema, I'd like to call upon you, please, Peter, if you can have Devarim 17:6, please. Easy one. 17:6. Whoa. Been practicing, Peter?
Practicing.
Practicing, oh, fair enough. Al pi shenayim eidim, o shlosha eidim, through the mouthpiece of two witnesses or three, yumas hames, the person will be put to death, could be put to death. Lo yumas al pi eid echad. He cannot be put to death. No one can be put to death with a mouth of one witness. Now, some people may remember repetition, hesitation, and etc. This looks a bit like repetition, but we know it's not repetition. What is the last part of that posuk telling us that we don't already know from the first part? The first part says 2, 3, or more. We've spoken about comparing 2 and 3, not for now, but we don't need to know that one is no good because you've got to have 2 or 3 or more. Back to our Gemara. Thank you, Peter. Says the Gemara, Lo yumas pi eid echad. My echad. What does it mean when it says echad at the end of that posuk? Elaim, if you'll tell me, it really means eid echad mamash. In other words, taken literally, it means one witness. Mereisha shaminon law, as Peter showed us on the posuk. We already learned that from the first part. Why? Because it says al pi shenayim eidim, with the mouth of 2 witnesses. So obviously one is not good enough. Elo, this is coming to tell me exactly this case, this singular type of testimony. Elo my echod, echod. Yes, we've got two witnesses observing something, but they are individuals and not linked in any way because they can't see each other. That's exactly what this posuk's telling us. You with me? So we got the first part, tells us there've got to be 2 witnesses or more. The second part tells us, obviously one is no good, but even if you've got 2, but are acting in a singular capacity because they can't see each other, that's why they're echod, al pi eid echod, even though it's 2, but it is 1 because they are not connected in any way. Elomai echod, back to the last narrow line of the Gemara. Elomai echod. Says the Gemara, Tanya nami hochi. We've got a brisa that supports this, that they're separate. Where's that from? Tanya nami hochi. Lo yumas, it's a brisa. Now, let's just work out the technicalities here. The statement we started with came from Rav. Rav is an Amoira, Premier Division, first generation, Rav, but nevertheless, that's not a Mishnah or a Brisa. If we can find support from a Brisa, which wasn't known by everybody, Mishnayos were, Brisas weren't, but they go back, then that will be extremely powerful and a support to what this statement may well be. That's where Rav had heard it from his teachers. But this is very good. Says the Gemara, Tanya Nami Ochi, we've got a Brisa, which says this very same point, that you can't join one from one place and one from another. Lo yumas al pi eid echad. What does it mean? No one can be killed with the mouth, the testimony of one individual. Lahovi, this comes to include, yes, there are two people giving testimony, but now look at this. Shenayim roim oisai echad mechalon zeb, echad mechalon zeb, from one window opposite the street. Ve'ein roin ze ezeh. They can't see each other. Therefore, even though they are two witnesses, they are considered as separate individual witnesses. She'ei mitztarfin. V'lod. Oh, now let's just stop there for a moment. So what are we seeing? We are seeing we've got a brisa which supports the view of Rav. Now you could ask, why did we go to the brisa? We've got something stronger than that, our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says exactly that point. Two from one window and two from another window, they don't join in. So presumably it will be the same, one and one. Why do we need a brisa for this? Have a look at the Tosfos, please, which begins Tanya Nami Hochi. Have you got that brisa? 4 wide lines down in Tosfos. Maisi Tanya Nami Hochi. The Gemara brings a brisa to support the statement. What's this brisa telling us? The brisa tells us the source. The Milo Yumas al pi eid echod, next line, nafka. That's where this halacha comes from. This is the source of this halacha. Di'ilu ikra the milsa, the actual halacha, the two people who can't see each other, that shomanu mimas nisin, that we learn from our Mishnah. You don't need a brisa for that. Denehi, albeit demas nisin lo iri be'echod michalon zeh. Our Mishnah is not talking about 1 and 1; it's talking about 2 and 2. Mikomono, nevertheless, mida ashmeninon bishtei kitos, as we've got the halacha from our Mishnah 2 and 2, they're two separate groups. The chashvinon shtei edius, because they can't see each other, they are considered two separate groups. Kishe'ein roin elu es elu. Mino shaminon. From that we can learn. Duhu hadin, the same halacha will apply. But kas achas, if it's one group, okay, that is the way Tosfos starts. And Tosfos says, why did we bring this brisa at all? We've got a Mishnah which tells us the principle. The brisa is just telling us the source. The Tanya Nami Hochi is coming to tell us the source, because otherwise we could have gone straight to the Mishnah. That is Tosfos's initial view on the Tanya Nami Hochi. Now continue Tosfos. Mikol Mokom, nevertheless, says Tosfos, Nira Yosel Farish, it appears more likely to explain the Ika Milsa Maisi. It is coming to tell me not just the source. This brisa is telling us the halacha as well. So you'll tell me we've got a Mishnah that tells us that. Says Tosfos, De'imi mas nisin, if we would learn this from the Mishnah, Havi Amina, I might have thought, Davka b'shtei kitos, That's only true if there are two groups. That means there are two. The kol chod choshev edus ba'apei nafsho. Every group in its own right has two people. They are testimony. And therefore, as it has the strength of one group, it doesn't need to join up with anybody else. And in fact, if they can't see each other, they will retain their own identity as one group. Continues Tosfos, Avo bakas achas, with one and one, making just one group, mitzdafi shaper, because they are on their own, they're looking to join with somebody, maybe even though they can't see each other, they will join up by the fact that they actually see the event. Are you with me? That's why I might have thought that 2 and 2 is different from 1 and 1. Yes, we know that in mathematics, indeed. I might have thought that 1 and 1 is actually better than 2 and 2. 2 and 2 is anywhere a group. So maybe they don't join up with another group. They don't need another group. So we don't let them join up unless they can see each other. But 1 and 1 where they're not a group to start with, maybe, it's only a logic, maybe that's different. And that's why we have this brisa which tells us even with 1 and 1, the same principle applies. Says Tosfos in conclusion, and so it would appear that is pshat. The Yosed doichek loima. It's more of a push to say deloi maisi tanya nami hochi rak haposuk. If you're only coming for the posuk, kivan the lekamanda paligale. Nobody seems to disagree with this point. Why? If it's just a source, then you wouldn't go normally for a Tanya Nami Hochi. You don't need a Tanya Nami Hochi just for a posuk. Once you've come up with a posuk, you don't need a proof for that. Notice the last 3 words of Tosfos.
Near the Mashiach? It's an abbreviation, I can't really.
Tricky one. Near the Mashiach. What is that about? Sorry? What does Tosfos mean? It would appear it means v'cheinira lemori sheyichye. Talking about his. In fact, we don't know who it is. He's not mentioning who it is. It will depend, I suppose, which Masechta. You find that from time to time in various Tosfosim, where it apparently remains nameless according to most people. So Mashiach means Mori Sheyichye, without mentioning his name. Rare, because you'd normally expect the name. And by the way, that was your question last week, Benjamin. We were talking about names. I haven't found very much about that Tana, that Baal Tosfos. I did look in a couple in a source which normally has all of them, but that one was not there. So I'm still doing a bit of searching on that point. So there we are. Back to our Gemara. So what's the rule?
Can I just ask, this Tosfos, do we know which Baal Tosfos? It's like a stum. There's no name of. It doesn't say which Tosfos.
Now, what you do need to do is find out who generally is the Baalita. You see, each Masechta is generally, could be the main author of the Tosfos would differ depending on the Masechta. So one would need to start doing some digging and finding out who is his main.
I just wondered, could that abbreviation mean Moraine? Moreno? No, what's the plural?
No,
could it mean our teachers?
Mori, my teacher.
Could it not be plural? Could it not be named because it's all our teachers, maybe?
Could be. You'd say then Morai Sheyichyu. Yeah, and that in some ways might be better than that's. Otherwise, had it been just one person,
why not give us the name?
Name him. If it was a whole selection of all his teachers, then you wouldn't necessarily mention that. So that's good. I like that. So you're saying therefore the Morai Sheyichyu, which you might as well do. Good one. I think most people say that's what this stands for. Mora sheyichya, Mora sheyichyu. And I think, Benjamin, you're right. It sounds more likely to be the second than the first. So it's good. We got Peter with his hand up.
So if you've got one witness who sees the event from one angle, and the second witness sees the event from another angle, do they constitute two valid witnesses, or is it because they're one witness on his own, it's not valid?
No, you're right. He is a valid witness. If he can see the other witness, they will join. If he can't, he does not join up to the other individual. They are two separate individuals.
But both valid.
Both, yes, yeah, absolutely. One witness is a valid witness. Can't do very much. In fact, you could have the same, imagine, in a monetary, financial matter. There are two witnesses who say, we saw this loan take place, for example, this multi-million loan, we saw this take place, but we can't see each other. Then they are not two witnesses, they are one, which mean now when it comes to a financial matter, one witness, they're not postulators, they're, upstanding, good, wonderful individuals, but they're not a group. They're not a two. As we said before, you need two. Two makes a pair, as we know. But no, that's very interesting. In a financial, good question, because in a financial matter, although this individual may say there's little I can do, I'm just on my own, but he could force an oath from one of the, if he says, no, I saw this take place, and the other chap says, no, I never borrowed any money, he could force him to make an oath on that, because that's what one person can do. He can't force him to pay. If they're two, and the individual saying, I did not borrow the money, and two witnesses, yes, you did, it's not like Punch and Judy, yes, you did, no, you didn't. We believe the two witnesses, as we've seen, Apishnai made him, and therefore the fellow will have to pay up. But one, yeah, you're quite right, is not a postulatus. Postal will be if he's found to be a criminal, then he's out. But if he's not, then he is a witness, but on his own, can't join up. That's really what we're saying. The Gemara continues. As we know from these Gemaras, no stone left unturned. Velo'od, second line down, second wide line down of the Gemara. Afilu bozeh achazeh. These two people can see each other, but they see the event not simultaneously, but one after the other. Ein mitztafin. They don't join. What do you mean they see the event? What's the Gemara coming to include? That's the end of the Brisa. That's the Tanya Nami Hochi, that even one got marked there. Hello there. I saw the sunlight on you, maybe, or just maybe your light. Hello. Very bright. So the second part of this Brisa tells us that they do not join up, even if they are together, if they don't see the event together, if they saw it one after the other. Says the Gemara, imagine a capital offense or a murder. You can't say they saw the murder one after. I mean, they either see the trigger being pulled or not. Omalera popular by hashta. My echod mechalin ze ve'echod mechalin ze. One from one window, one from another window. We learned that what? Dahai kochozi kula maisa. Bahai kochozi kula maisa. Everyone sees the full event, only they can't see each other. Omat or omrus lo mitztarfi. They don't join. Oh, hello. Yeah, see you now. So yes, what are we saying? We're saying two witnesses to join up must be able to see each other, right? We said that doesn't work if they can't see each other. Says the Gemara, Bezeh achazeh, If one after the other, the high chosi palga, what's in one after the other? They don't see a full event. The high says palga the maisa, the high chosi palga the maisa. If you're telling me they both saw the event, right? But what do you mean that they're not seeing a full event if they don't see it, both see it at the same time? What's the example we're talking about? It doesn't make sense. Do you understand? The Gemara is saying where they both see the full event, they see him pulling the trigger, can't join. If they don't both see him pulling the trigger, one sees half. I don't know what half means, actually, pulling a trigger or not. Obviously, it doesn't join it. They haven't seen the full action, the full act. Omalei, it could happen in the following case. As I say, no stone left unturned. This person's having relations with a forbidden somebody, a lady who's already married. You could have the example, as Rashi says, each one following each other, even though they both see the event one after the other, but that relationship is still continuing on. The act is still continuing on. I might have thought because those two individuals are together, maybe that counts. Answers the Gemara. That is what we're talking about here. So the line, what's the halacha? Two people must see the full event together. They both got to see the same event, and they've got to be able to see each other. If they can't see each other, they do not join. There's one slight difference we said in the Mishnah. If you've got 2 and 2, they both don't need to see each other. Very interesting. You've got a connection between 2 and 2 if you've got just one sees one, if you see what I mean. Do you understand what I mean? You've got 2 and 2. You don't need all 2 to see each other. Obviously, if it's 1 and 1, you will, because otherwise there's no joining up to make the number 2. But if you've got 2 and 2, all you need is one from one window, seeing one person the other window, then all 2 and 2 will make 4. There you go. 2 and 2 equals 4, and that will be the case we're talking about there. Okay, on we go, gentlemen. Omar Rava. Rava says, Im hoyu royin es hamasre. If they see the person who's giving the warning, now make the difference between being a witness and hasra. Hasra means a warning to the individual saying, don't pull, in the case of a murder, don't pull the trigger. If you pull the trigger, that is called murder. And that for murder, it's a capital offense. That needs to be explained to the person immediately prior to the act. Otherwise, quite rightly, maybe this person didn't understand what was going on and didn't realize he was only playing with a gun and didn't realize he actually could kill. It's actually a loaded gun. He may not realize that particular act is forbidden. It could be a halacha of Shabbos, for example. So this person needs to be warned. Don't do this act. This act will cause an avera, or whatever it happens to be. So that's called hasra. So let's go back to Rava again. Omer Rava. Im hoyu royin es hamasre. If they saw the person giving the testimony, o hamasra roya oison. We've got an extension to our loch in the Mishnah. Mitztarfin. That's good enough. Very interesting. So let's go back. We've got 2 and 2. Looking, as we said before, like one of these westerns. Yeah. They're looking out of different windows and they're seeing what's taking place down below in the road, street. If they can't see each other, they are 2 separate groups. If at least one sees each other, one sees one, then they join one group. If they can't see each other, but they both can see the masre down below, they can see the person who's giving the warning. So they see the action taking place, and they also see the person giving the warning. Then that person, interesting, like you can imagine the arrow goes down to the person giving the warning. The arrow here goes down to the person giving the warning, and that will join them up. And more than that, continues Rava. Oh, next line. Have you got it? S, beginning of the line. Es hamasra. Oh, hamasra roye oison. Or if the person giving the warning can see them, they can't necessarily see, or they looks like they didn't see him. I don't know how. I suppose it could be through some type of wall or something in between. But he can see them, and he did see them. Then that will also join up the two groups. Okay, and we got Mervyn for a question there.
Yeah, can an aid be? Can the masra also be an aid?
The person giving the test, that's going to cause a problem. Maybe what happens if it's related or whatever. But we'll see it. Let's wait a minute. Hold on to that, because some people are saying the witnesses themselves need to give the hasra. At the moment, at the moment, we are assuming that he could, in fact, be well. It sounds like you've got two other aided besides him. That's it. Remember, we said only if he wants to come to give the test. He's just warning. But now there's a difference. He could be a witness if he sees what happens, but we don't necessarily need that person who's giving the warning to see what finally takes place. So in answer to your question, the assumption is, yes, this person could be a witness, but it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily need the person who's giving the warning to actually see the event. He can then disappear. Or maybe the person giving the warning can't see everything that happens subsequently. That's fine. But he's given the warning, and the two witnesses saw that the person was given the warning. But you're quite right.
I was just thinking it's probably unlikely because there's only one person giving the warning, so he would not.
You're going to have at least one other person.
Certain, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a theoretical. I was just asking whether.
No, it's a good point. According to this, yes, that person could be a witness, but he doesn't necessarily have to be a witness. You've got without him, if you've got 2 and 2 or 1 and 1, then they can join up. And it might be that the person giving the warning doesn't see the finally, he then turns around or whatever. So now there's one problem here. If we're saying that they join up by the person who's giving the warning seeing both of them, right? They're not looking at him, they don't see him, but he sees them. I don't know how, maybe it's close. He's looking through some type of window and he can see them, they can't see him. That will then join up the two witnesses. So you've got 1 and 1, the person giving the warning, he sees them. You can imagine the arrow you've got now. The arrow joins up those people. Now, there's a very interesting Oy hamasre roya oison. I just wanted to point out the next Tosfos was asked a very, very basic question here. Just 1 minute. What did I want to tell you? Have a look at the penultimate Tosfos. Don't have to go through all of that, but I want to pick up one point. which is the person who see. How are they joining up, therefore, these two? By the person who is warning them, seeing both of them. But that person himself is only one. So it turns out one person, if they can see him, and they can see each other, they can see him, then you've got at least two witnesses saying, we saw the person give the warning. Fine, and I can understand that. You've got two people saying that. They say they saw, not only that, they can see him as well. They might not be able to see each other, but they can see him. You've got then, as we know, the principle that Peter showed us before, you need two witnesses. We constantly talk about two witnesses. That's fine. I've got two witnesses who saw the person giving the warning, don't shoot. They join. But if it's the person who's giving the warning that sees both of them and they don't see each other and they can't see him, we're therefore relying on this group of two. Well, it's only two people. They're becoming two witnesses by the mouth of the person who said, only one person saying, I saw that window, those two witnesses who saw the event take place. Are you with me? Or yeah? So says Tosfos, penultimate Tosfos. One, two, beginning of the beginning line is miuchedes. Ve'in toima. Have you got the word miuchedes into it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the end of the Omud in Tosfos, and the beginning of the line is miuchedes. Yeah. Keep going. Ve'in toima, asks Tosfos. Va'hechi mehinni lei. How can you believe him? I mean, yeah, a trustworthy individual, that may well be, but he's only one. Lo meshero oison laharoi geser. You're now based on his testimony. You're joining up the two witnesses, who in turn will say that let's say a murder took place, and then you're going to kill the person who pulled the trigger. If they see the person giving the warning, hurry hein shnayim, then you've got two at least. That's fine. We know two witnesses is what you need. So if both of them see the person giving the warning, you've got two witnesses. But if it's the masre who sees them, that's testimony from one individual. Are you with me? It's true. He, like Mervin's point, he might not be the person who's giving the testimony about the murder. You don't need him. You've got these other two witnesses. But how do those two witnesses join up when they can't see each other? Only by virtue of the fact that the person giving the warning, in our example here, can see both of them. But that's testimony of one person. Says Tosfos v'yesh loima demari. You have to say this is talking about sheyesh edim shemeidim shehamasner roya oisom. You've got two other witnesses who can testify that yes, it was very clear that this person giving the warning could see both of them. These other two witnesses didn't see the event, because if they are the two witnesses themselves, but they did see, and they are certain that the person who gave the warning could see the other two individuals. Are you okay? Getting a bit complicated. Back now to our Gemara.
Can I just ask, do we not?
Yeah, hello, yeah. Benji, yes.
Do we not need witnesses to say that the man who gave the warning gave a proper warning?
Oh, yes.
So there must have been two. There must have been at least one other person there.
Well, there must be somebody who said that he gave the yes, yeah.
The Tosfos sounds is not so far-fetched.
Yeah, no, absolutely, very good point. If they see the person giving the testimony, they're giving the warning, then of course you've got your two people. So yeah, as you say, it's not too far-fetched. You're going to have somebody who said they saw the warning take place. Although you'll look at the next piece of Gemara and you'll see they might just have heard it. Have a look at the Gemara. Good to see you, Malcolm. Just continuing on here in our Gemara. So we're talking about joining up two different witnesses. The beginning of the line is S, about 15 lines up. If the two witnesses who can't see each other see the person giving the warning. Or the person giving the warning can see them mitztarfin. Now, this will answer your question, Benjamin. Rova says the masre she'omru, this person who's giving the warning, afilu mipiatzmai. That's amazing. The man himself says, and he shouts out before he pulls the trigger, I know full well what I'm doing. I'm pulling this trigger, and I know what that means, and I know it's a death penalty. I don't care. I want to pull this trigger. So that's pretty clear. He's warned himself. You know himself. That's what it means. Apiatzmai. Va'afilu mipi hashade. Hashade means where you don't know where the voice is coming from. It doesn't matter. It may be somebody out of another. That's really what the word shade here means. It doesn't mean a demon. It means someone that you don't know where the voice is coming from. So that will answer your question. If you're allowed to have someone just shouting out, so you don't necessarily need to see, you don't need two witnesses to see that they saw the individual giving the warning. Yeah, as long as they're two witnesses, they know the warning took place, they heard it. They might not have seen the person giving the testimony, giving the warning, but they heard the warning. They know that the person who pulled the trigger was warned prior to the act, whatever the act happened to be. Yeah. Then what we're learning here from Rava, that as long as there was a warning prior to the act, and that warning doesn't have to come with witnesses to testify that they saw the person giving that warning, but they have to know there was a warning, because in fact the person can warn himself and say, I know exactly what I'm doing, etc. That will be good enough. So we've been around and seen quite a few interesting halachas out of this. Okay, so what, in conclusion, we've said you can have two witnesses, or one-on-one, as long as they can see each other across a road through windows, they would join up. If they can't see each other, even though they see the event taking place, they don't join. If they can both see the person giving the warning, that will join them up. Interesting. If they just see the murder take place, that's not good enough. They're both seeing the murder. They have to join in an independent capacity. And they can either do that by looking through the window, seeing each other, or by this, if you like, this dotted line towards a person giving the warning, that will then join up to themselves. Okay?
Can I just ask something, Norman?
Yeah, sorry, there was Mervyn, with his hand up. Yes.
I apologize. I mean, this case of Omar Rova, Masresh Omru, Afilim Piazza, I mean, this puts he's obviously psychotic. I mean, he's warning himself that he's not allowed to commit a murder. I mean, it puts in question the balance of his mind, or
that may well be, and obviously that's something the Dayan would have to look into. Absolutely, you're right. But you're quite right. They'd have to clarify whether, in fact, you're right. This person was not of sound mind, and therefore that would obviously be a mitigating factor, and of course it wouldn't be necessarily amazing. You're right. But the principle we're getting here is, prior to pulling a trigger, he has to know, and where does he get this knowledge from, that what he's doing, the gun is loaded, it's going to kill. He has to know that the act is forbidden. He has to know what the penalty is. And if he actually, wherever that comes from, according to Rava, where it comes from an individual, whether somebody out of another window shouting out, they can't actually see the individual, but it's pretty clear for the person who's pulling the trigger, he heard this. That again, of course, it will be up to Dayanim to check all this. And that's why, of course, we're not here, not for this week, where, of course, it was so rare that, in fact, the death penalty was ever carried out, because, of course, all this has to be gone through, and you got about the witnesses and everything else. But
he has to say it out loud, doesn't he?
Theoretically, it's
the
possible.
Haftorah has to be said out loud, because this guy.
Oh yeah. It's got to be said out loud. These witnesses have to know there was a warning. They have to say, we both heard the warning. We didn't see each other, but we heard the warning. And of course, the Dayanim would have to check that out, of course.
How do you translate shade? I didn't hear you.
Well, a shade strictly means a demon, but I think the Meforshim here mean it's you don't know where the voice is coming from. There's an equivalent, like you say, like a demon. It doesn't really mean a demon in that way. But if they can't actually see where is this coming from. It might just, as say, be somebody through another window somewhere else shouting out, and they can't see who it was who actually gave that warning. It doesn't matter. As long as there's a warning explaining that will count.
It's interesting that Rashi doesn't seem to comment.
No, yeah,
means it's
because I mean the principle is that there's no individual you can say that's the chap that gave the warning. Okay.
And Norman, a quick question, because I missed last week, and this may be covered. The fact that they can see each other is somewhat counterintuitive, because you would think if two witnesses can't see each other, they have different vantage points for the murder or whatever else is going on, and therefore they can validate each other by saying, well, we saw the act, we didn't see each other, but we both saw the same act from a different vantage point. But you're saying actually they validate each other, or they can be joined together if they see each other, which would imply that they at least have got, they're on a level with each other, or they can there's a line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, they could be looking out two separate windows in one flat, if you like, and they can see each other. That would be good.
And that's enough validation to make them join together as witnesses.
Yes. As long they've got to become one pair. How do they become there? And as Peter mentioned before, if they can't see each other, it's not that we don't trust them, but they are not a pair. And there's a rule that says you've got to have two witnesses, and they are two individuals, not a group of witnesses. That's the point. The Torah is very particular. It's got to be two individuals together have to see, and the way they are together as a group is if they can see each other. Interesting, as we said before, if you had 2 and 2, if just one of them can see one and one, then again that joins up. It's considered one group. That's really what we're saying. But it's not. We're not saying that there's anything wrong with the aid. It's just they do not become 2, and there's a ruling which said it's got to be 2 minimum. Yeah, says the Gemara as we move along. Omar Rav Nachman, Eidus Miuchedes. This principle about 1 and 1, and as we say, remember Eidus Miuchedes. Rashi defined that for us. It means a singular testimony, albeit 2 people saying the same thing. That's what Eidus Miuchedes means. Like 2 different windows, but they can't see each other. What about in a financial matter? Says the Gemara, Eidus Miuchedes Keshera Bedine Mominus. On a financial matter, that's fine. If you've got 2 people, they were in a room, they both saw this loan take place, they couldn't see each other, they were blocked by something, I don't know what. You've got a wall in between. But they both saw this financial matter take place. They saw the loan take place. That is fine. Why? Because back to the posuk that Peter showed us before, because the posuk says, Lo yumas al pi eid echad. Nobody can be killed by one. And we said that word one meant 1 and 1, if you see what I mean. Yeah? You've got to have 2 witnesses. And 2 witnesses themselves, even if they both see the event, but they can't see each other, they are considered one. So, but the pasuk says, "Lo yumas," no one can be killed through eid echad, meaning a 1 and 1 situation. Says the Gemara, Lo yumas al pi eid echod b'dinei nefashos hu. If it's a capital offense, that's when the principle of da'ain kashera, avo b'dinei mominus kashera. So again, it's back to Laurie, back to this principle again. That we are very strict to allow this death penalty, which is really what it's going to lead to. We've got a posuk which is reducing that death penalty unless they can see each other. That's the point. You might say it's counterintuitive because they both saw the event take place. No, the Torah says we want there to be two witnesses who are joined. That's not to say maybe this event did happen and they're both telling the truth, but that's not enough to kill that murderer. That's what we're saying. And the proof of that is if it's a financial matter. Now, I know financial matters sometimes also kill people if, imagine the size of the loan. But in principle, they're telling the truth. Nobody's denying they're not telling the truth. Nobody's saying they're not telling the truth. And therefore, on a financial matter, it doesn't matter if they can't see each other. As long as they both give testimony, we were there at that time. We couldn't actually see each other. There was a wall between us, but I saw this loan take place. And the other fellow says, I also saw this loan take place. That's good enough. Okay? So that's what we're saying here. Actually, can I just go back on one point that we made before about the individual? This will answer Mervin's point about the person killing. And I've stopped at this point, but just I want to go back. Mervin asked the question, if this individual himself is warning himself, then it sounds like there's, sounds a bit shaky, the whole individual, there's something is he of sound mind? Look what Rashi says about that. Mipi atzmai. Rashi avoids that question by saying it's talking about hahorug atzmai hisrabai, the individual being killed, and that then you haven't got your problem. In other words, the person about to be killed said, "Don't pull the trigger. Don't pull the trigger on me. That's loaded that gun, and do you realize what this means? And you know what it's a capital offense and what that means, etc." Then you haven't got the problem of being sound mind. He's that's as good as anybody else could give the testimony. So there you are. Yeah. So that would avoid him the question you raised. So just one final question before we pack up on the Gemara. So what are we saying here? It's kosher if now we had another principle, if you remember, perhaps it's getting to remember with 2 and 2, we said that they join up if they can see each other. Right? Now with 2 and 2, there's a leniency about them being one group. What's the leniency? If they are one group, if they can't see each other, we said they are 2 separate groups. If they are one group, 4 people, 2 of them are found to be Eidim Zomimim, the whole testimony collapses. Once you remember, Nimtza Echad Mehem Korov Apostle, if in a group, however large that group is, you find someone, one or more, not fit to give testimony, maybe they're crooks. Eidim Zomim, of course they're crooks. They wanted this, they weren't even at the event. That's what Eidim Zomim means. They were somewhere else. The whole testimony collapses. So it turns out there's a leniency by allowing 2 and 2 who don't see each other to join up If a group of them, any one or two, any of them, are found to be Eidim Zomimim, everything will collapse. The case will collapse. Where if they're two separates, if you've got these two collapsing, you've still got the other two. You with me? So it turns out, in the case of financial matters, we said, it doesn't matter if they can't see each other, they join up. Says the Gemara now, Maskif lo mazutra, elo miato. If we've found that there can be a leniency in joining up, bedine nefoshes tatsil. There's a rule that says we try to be as lenient as we can to get this convicted individual, to get him freed. We don't want to kill the convicted individual. They're not convicted yet. Now, the Mishnah said that when we had 2 and 2 and they can't see each other, the one group is found to be Eidim Zomimim. What's going to happen? You've got the other two, in which case the person, that the suspected murderer will be killed. In fact, the other two will be killed too, as well. So you've ended up, out of this group of 5 people, 3 of them are being killed. You with me? Now, says, there's a ruling which says we try to be as lenient as possible in the case of a capital offense. Now, if it would lead to a leniency, and we find in the case of a financial matter that they are joined, says the Gemara, why did we learn in the Mishnah, Hu v'hei ne'erogin? We should, in that case, where you've got 2 and 2, they can't see each other. I know normally they don't join up, but if it means that by joining up, everything, the case is going to collapse, the individual's not going to be killed, the 2 Eidim are not going to be killed, and there's a principle. Have a look at Rashi. B'dinei nefoshes. Oh, we saw that. Elo miato diksherim ba'alma mitztarfei. B'dinei nefoshes, we should say the same rule in the case of a capital offense. Look at Rashi, where it said, beginning of the line, Kushe roi mechalen zeh. 2 see from one window. Ushnayim mechalen zeh. They can't see each other. V'huzmu kas achas. One of those group of 2 is found to be Eidim Zomimim. Titztaref Eidus zu niyos kulam kekas achas. Why don't we then say, just like in the case of a financial matter, we join 2 groups, 2 people who can't see each other. Let's do the same here. Why? Now, this is the crucial part. Lahatzil, to save es hazomimim. Those 2 people have been found Eidim Zomimim. Ve'esanid, and the person being accused. Shetei edosan betela. Why? In principle, they do join, and the proof of that is in a financial matter. Yesh ta'am kan lahatziloi, that we should use that principle, although the Torah says they don't join up, but maybe it's only they don't join up if you're going to be lenient about it, not if you're going to be strict about it. Brachmona, there's a posuk which says v'tzilu ho'eda, which means you go out of your way to try and save an individual from the death penalty. So that's the Gemara's question, which is the following: 2 and 2 don't join up, but as Laurie mentioned, they really do join up in a financial. The proof is they are kosher Eidim. They just don't join up in this capital offense. But if by joining them up, that's going to help the accused not to be killed. In fact, the 2 of them won't be Eidim Zomimim. Why shouldn't we do that? And the Gemara concludes with the words kashya. Kashya means, you're right, good question. Now, very quickly, if you just, Peter, bring up the first point I sent you, which was Rashi on Sanhedrin. And we'll close with this Rashi. Have you got the Rashi in Sanhedrin for us? It looks like it's on its way. Yes. I think we'll have to blow that up. Oh, wow, that's good. Now, oh, there, excellent. The third line down in Rashi. Oh, no, that's the Baba Basra one. I wanted the other one, please. I could do this one, but it'll take too long. I haven't got the time. I want the one in Sanhedrin, which was the first one I sent. Not, this is Marcus. No.
Oh, sorry.
That's Marcus. We want the Sanhedrin one. And there it is. Excellent. If we can blow that up a bit. Worth remembering this source, Sanhedrin Ayin base, drop down a bit because I'm trying to pick up a Rashi which starts off with the words Kashya. So keep going down, further down. Kashya, there it is. Stop. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wide lines down. And I'm not going to go into the case there in Sanhedrin. It's just a principle. Rashi says Kashya. Kashya masnisi letirutza. Okay, fine, whatever the case is there. Umikol mokoi. Next line, where your arrow is or equivalent. Yeah. Oh, lost it. Have you got the beginning of the line, which begins aliba derav? Just where your arrow is. Yes. Mikol mokoi. This is important. Tiyufta lo havi. The fact that the Gemara, that's in Sanhedrin, but of course you can use the same principle in our case. The Gemara does not say tiyufta. That's a big question. And the difference is between a punch and a knockout punch. A tiyufta is a knockout. Just like in our Gemara, the Gemara over there uses the word kashya, explains Rashi, tiyufta lo havi. It's not a knockout, and it gives a reason why over there. Behind the ikka, if you take away that little piece at the end, behind the ikka, just remove that. Bain kushya l'tiyufta. What Rashi is saying is the following. Go back to see our faces. Rashi is explaining the following. If the Gemara says tiyufta, that's a knockout question, and we'll have to revise what we said before. Kasha means that was a good question. I don't know what the answer is. The Gemara maybe hasn't got an answer at that moment, but had an answer later on. We don't know what the answer is that it was given, but it will not overturn what we said before. It sounds like there is an answer. The Gemara is not explaining what it is, but yeah, it's a good kasha. A tiyufta means that's a knockout blow. In fact, we'll have to go back and revise. So sometimes we can have a question which, and I suppose the answer you'd have to say here is we've got a posuk which tells us that, and that will override this. The fact that we've got this posuk that tells us, remember the posuk that we saw right at the beginning? Al pi eid echad, lo you mas al pi eid echad, which is telling us that you do not join come what may. You may have a principle and you want to try and be more lenient to these people, the convicted, etc. That's not good enough. We have this posuk which says lo you mas al pi eid echad, which means in capital offences we do not join up. Whether it's actually going to be an advantage or a disadvantage for the person being accused, it doesn't matter. There's a principle that Torah is telling us that to join in a capital offense, they must see each other. Even though logic may tell us that if we're trying to be more lenient, sometimes there can be instances where it would be good if we could join them up, especially as that happens all the time in financial matters. The Gemara here is telling us that it doesn't matter. The principle is that in capital offences, they do not join up unless they can actually see each other, or as we've explained before, they can see the person who's giving the warning, then that's equivalent to them all joining up together. And with that, we will conclude for tonight.
Well, does teku the same as tiyufta? That's another way of answering a question, isn't it? Teku. Tishbi Yoba Itaris.
Yeah, but that's different. That's still not. That's not as strong as the Tiyufta.
Ah, it's halfway in between.
Tiyufta means that is a knockout blow, and we were wrong. What we said before is wrong. We're going to have to revise what we said. Teku means you're right. It's like a. That's a question we haven't got an answer to.
But there is an answer.
But right, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, okay.
Kasha means that's a good kasha. If you think about it, you can come up with your own answers, no doubt. That seems to be the way that Rush is taking this. So that's what we're saying here. And therefore, we do paskin. Had it been a tiyufta, we'd have to revise what we said before about having seeing each other. We're not saying that at all. We are saying what we said at the very beginning, that Eidos Miucheres is no good. Okay? And with that, gentlemen, we will close. Peter can bring up the chapter 121.
Are we on for next week? Are we on for next week?
Yeah, I'll be okay for next week, gentlemen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, or not. Yeah, everybody's okay. Yeah. Very good indeed. Look forward to seeing you one and all. And let's just have a look at Shiur Malos, Shiur La Malos. So May Hashto Bagolo. Anoma Amen. Let's hope for Basuras Tovus all round. Good news. Let's hope it's going to be good news. The elections tomorrow, and hope it's good for Klal Yisrael. Let's hope. Everywhere, Basuras Tovus. Good to see you, Mark. Got back safely.